We are recording the session, and it will go up probably either on their YouTube channel, or you can reach out to the IOC to get a copy of it later. It's not being live streamed, but it is being recorded. The project is basically, we're talking about the Allston I-90, I-90, obviously the Turnpike. Oh, is it better? Oh, sorry, I apologize. I assume my voice would carry. What we're talking about today is the Allston Viaduct, largely Allston Viaduct, which is basically the area between the toll booth, the interchange, and the BU Bridge, which is now either at or beyond its useful life and needs to be replaced. And this is an incredible opportunity to re-envision what that roadway, that major artery in and out of the city from the west, could look like. And it really implicates both the Turnpike itself, but also a number of transit modes, a number of new transit options, active transportation options, land use development, local streets. It really touches on almost everything. So I think it is an incredible opportunity, and one we don't normally see in the city, to really reimagine transportation access and development in a whole new way. And that really does lead me to my first question, and it's for you, Fred. Recently, MassDOT got a pretty significant Connecting Communities grant, about $340 million, to help make this project a reality. How do you see the project both reconnecting the existing community from the Turnpike and also kind of connecting it back into the greater Boston area better?
Okay, I think I was going to see. I always say to my students when I was teaching, my guest lecture for Jim, if God's going to make you smart or lucky, choose lucky. And in a Biden infrastructure bill and the Connected Communities program really helps emphasize some of the most important features of the Allston multimodal project, and hoping that the grant will help to essentially force the agency to actually deliver the connectivity, which was the basis for which they got the money. I can say bad things about civil engineers because I have one myself, and this bad habit of thinking that you found money under a pillow and you're going to build a road because you like to do roads and forget about development and community and environmental compatibility and everything else. So I think the source of money is really fortuitous, I hope, in holding the project to really delivering those promises. There are elements of connectivity at this.
Says so. Does anybody here know where the Connecting Communities Act is? The national? New York? Yes, no? I does not know. All right. So just really quickly, what Fred was talking about, the money that Rob was asking about. The 2021 bipartisan infrastructure bill included, President Biden asked for $15 billion for a program to reconnect communities that were affected by the design and construction of urban interstates back in the middle of the last century. Congress's wisdom took the $15 billion and made it $1 billion. But that $1 billion has been added to a different federal program. So right now they've got about $3.5 billion to play with. And the reason I wanted to just make sure everyone understood this, if you remember and think about the way in which the interstate highway system was built in the 1960s and 70s, particularly in urban areas, it was often built without regard to communities, right? With specific, sometimes malicious design in places like Atlanta, segregate communities, or in Syracuse, New York. Here in Allston, it's a little bit of a different issue because the Turnpike I-90 is not part of the interstate highway system. He's built without federal money because it was a standalone toll authority. However, Turnpike no longer exists. So the Secretary of Transportation put it out of business since he passed it in '90. And so now it's eligible for this kind of funding. And I think it's important to put that into context because a lot of what we'll talk about is, in terms of reconnecting communities, the spirit of this law that I think was really extremely timely and well intended by the president was to make reparation for really bad decisions that were made in the middle of the last century. Oftentimes, infrastructure decisions, legacy infrastructure, really, really difficult to take down, to remove. You only have state highways, the only major highways I know of in my lifetime that come now. One's a connect to God, the Embarcadero and San Francisco. The other's a connect of Fred, the Central Artery and Fox. So I'm sorry. But I want to
So one thing, so it's also so the connectivity on this that are particularly important here are connectivity at many different scales. So the word connectivity can be ambiguous, so I want to be a little bit precise here. When the turnpike was built, especially in the section in Allston, it there had been a 4-track rail system, may have been more than 4 tracks in spots, with a lot of commuter rail service as well as freight service. The private railroad was losing money with passenger business, so didn't care about it because that institution was a bottom line private sector. Doesn't matter if it's in public interest or not. He's not making money. We don't care about it. So the turnpike, when it was built, bought out the land from what was then in Boston Albany Railroad, discontinued 2 of the tracks. In fact, discontinued 3 of the tracks. There was a section in Allston. There was a single track that had to operate in those directions, which is not very convenient if you've got a kind of frequency. So a really good, technically good rail system was mangled. 4 rail stations were destroyed, or at least made no longer functional. Newton Corner, Brooks on the Newton Bright line, Brook Street towards Oak Square, Market Street, and the depot, which survived, fortunately, as a building and as a restaurant. It was a Regia for a while. It's named for, it's named Hobson's. Anybody know why? Haribo's.
The architect who designed the building.
Yeah, Henry Hobson Richardson was the designer of the building, so they have this little inside joke of naming the restaurant. Well, hey, it's a great building, but it's no longer, and hasn't functioned as a rail station since the turnpike was built. So the connectivity at a somewhat regional scale was badly disrupted, the rail connectivity. It was built in elevated configuration in the vicinity of the Charles River. So it really cuts off Boston University and South Allston from the Charles River. It cuts off South Allston, which is an environmental justice community. Is cut off from North Allston and cut off from any reasonable connection to the Charles River, the Esplanade, the All-W White path. So there's a severing of the local, very local community. And the concept really comes from, in my experience, the concept largely comes of the project is based on, comes from a very creative guy named Antonio DiAdamo, who some of you know. Antonio did a thesis when he was an MIT student that totally envisioned a different way of looking at Allston And he basically said, well, there's a north station and a south station. There should be a west station. It should be a center of multimodal new section of the city. And the connections that Antonio envisioned are largely now included in the concept that's, we hope, going to become real. So West Station is supposed to be a 4-track, 2-platform station. 2 of the tracks out for the Whisper Branch and the railroad, which again had them reduced to 1, which is Surrey. It went back to 2 10 years ago, and it works better than it did as 1. But at West Station, there's supposed to be a 2-track rail shuttle on something called the Grand Junction Railroad, which if you look at the Charles River, it's that odd little rail bridge that crosses diagonally under the B Bridge. And from West Station, there's supposed to be a 2-track frequent rail shuttle that will get you on the backside of MIT to a stop at Kemble Square and then continue to a stop at Mass Station. So what that does, if you're living in Newton and you want to go to Kendall, or if you're living in Worcester, want to go to Kendall Square, you have to slog all the way through a large number of stations, Lansdowne, Back Bay, crawl along at the silly low way at speed that the thing operates between Back Bay and South Station. Tracer, get onto the red line. Oh, that's the price. Now I get onto the red line at South Station. I got to go through downtown Crossing, through Park Street, through Charles, and Venturi. I packed the lunch at Eaton by now, Kendall. Instead, with West Station, you get off, transfer onto this shuttle, and the next stop is Kendall. So it dramatically changes the connectivity. And connectivity works in more than one direction. So from the perspective of businesses located in Kendall, it dramatically expands the residential populations that can access by public transportation Kendall. But from the point of view of those residential areas, Newton, Natick, Wellesley, Framingham, Worcester, they now can access, if this is built as it's supposed to be, they can access Kendall. So you've got this regional connectivity that West Station embodies, and you've got connectivity because an organization called the Better City, where several people here work, or why don't you raise your heads, spies from a Better City. Particularly because of Rick Domino, who really pushed tremendously to get the Turnpike rebuilds at Bray rather than replicating the bizarre variable structure that now cuts the south side off from the river. And that being at Gray creates the opportunity for air rights development around West Station that has terrific transit connectivity to the Charles River, room for affordable housing, connectivity to the south side, South Allston, Brookline, and BU. In many ways, what Antonio envisioned is doing again what was done with the Prudential Center, which was once a railroad yard, and when the Turnpike was built, it was the rail freight functions, which were no longer really being fully used, moved elsewhere. Prudential Insurance came into the city. It was the first major economic development the city of Boston had seen since before the Great Depression. So it was hugely significant regionally, and the Turnpike was part of that positive story But in Allston and Brighton and Newton, there was a very negative side in terms of the impact that it had for the communities. So the Biden infrastructure bill is just perfect for remedying the damage that did by flattening the road, allowing transit-oriented development over it. And the amount of land available to develop is bigger than the potential side. So it's a really significant regional opportunity. Now, physically, we can, I don't want to talk too long, I want to get into questions and answers, but physically, I think you've got an idea of what we're talking about here. But Antonio also had an institutional idea, which no one was talked about in a while, which is unfortunate. I'm hoping we'll restart that conversation. Antonio's view was that institutionally, we're lucky in Boston to have a lot of very good educational institutions. BU, where we are, Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, Longwood Medical, all the teaching hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. Increasingly, research is being done at research universities on a multi-university basis. Yeah, there's the cancer research facility. It's MIT and Harvard joint venture, actually at the Mary Junction location near Kendall. Antonio's vision was this land is the perfect meeting spot between these academic institutions, and it's a place that should have a lot of synergy and really do something dramatic. And that part of the discussion has faltered in part because the project is taking so long to get going. And you can't really motivate people to have a discussion about what do we do with this great piece of land if they don't believe the great piece of land is ever going to happen, because the project is never going to happen. It's been a decade. Now, there's a tendency to blame the environmental process for these delays. What gives me hope about the highway system is the introduction of environmental requirements, so that you're not supposed to be able to do things like the original turnpike or the original elevated central arteries. You're supposed to actually consider the external impacts and involve the neighbors, care about equity, et cetera, et cetera. You're supposed to. Doesn't always happen. The environmental law is a necessary but not sufficient condition to get people thinking the right way. Often, the environmental process is an excuse for austerity-minded policymakers who don't want to spend money, and they blame the environmental process and they drag their feet. Now, Ellen Altshuler, who was the Massachusetts' first Secretary of Transportation, I had a good lot to follow. Alan did the Boston Transportation Planning Review, totally transformed the concept of how transportation should work, shifted in a much more transit-oriented development, canceled some interstate highways that were going to rip through the center of the city. He did that study in a manner to comply with the brand new National Environmental Policy Act of 1970, and he did it in 18 months. So anybody who tells you it's going to take 10 years to do what we'll do a year, it doesn't take 10 years. It's taking 10 years because somebody wanted it to take 10 years. But you can do the environmental process well and quickly. Altshuler did. When we were doing the big dig, it wasn't called that at the time, we, in 1983, had to go from a draft environmental impact statement to a final in the space of 9 months, and we got it done. And we had to change the location of the tunnel, which had previously been a location through the middle of East Boston. The intervening King administration had dropped, put in the central artery route, so we had to reintroduce that. So we went draft to final with a major change in concept. We did it within a month, skate on in time for the federal deadlines. And when we had public hearings on the project, there was all kinds of support from left to right, top to bottom. I think it's the only interstate highway project in the United States that's supported at the public hearing by the Sierra Club, something I was always very proud of. So you can do the environmental process well and quickly. Environmental doesn't have to mean slow. In fact, when things go this slowly, people get discouraged and forget why they're doing it. So it's more put a dent in that dragon at least. So I think there's an opportunity to take advantage of the situation, get this renewed connectivity, really improve the transportation system. It is a transportation project, but in the funding and Tom Ryan, Tom Malley, two of the ABC rascals, when they raised their hands. I mean, their lives, they did a lot of the work supporting Rick, who's on the Mass type board, and
Glenn, yeah, too.
oh, okay, sorry, Glenn Lry. Yes, okay. The finance plan that they put together managed to get the federal $335 million, but it also managed to get $300 million from Harvard, BU, and the city of Boston. And that's not, the basis of that is that the enhanced value of their real estate will allow them to get a revenue stream, the city to have a revenue stream to actually pay back that amount of money. And I mention these financial aspects because the civil engineers often want to forget that the deal is you're getting $300 million because you're enhancing development. When you have to enhance development, you can't say we're not going to put in foundations. When the turnpike was originally built, the only air rights that went in were the Prudential Center and the stuff in Newton Commons, Star Market, that is the stuff that was built at the same time as the turnpike. We've begun to see a few additions to the air rights now, but they're extremely expensive to do after the fact if you didn't plan them before the fact. So it's essential that for this project to meet its potential and establish this connectivity at the local community, regional community level, but also at the economic development level, it's essential to do this correctly so that it can be developed. If you want to see a very strategic piece of land that's been totally mangled by the way the highway construction occurred, go near South Station on Nealon Street and look south at the moonscape of ramps that you see. That's supposed to be transit-oriented development. And the roads are so brutal, no developers are interested. So it's really critical that a broad range of people focus on this project now to make sure that it meets its potential, both for transportation, but also for development and for environmental compatibility, and mending the damage that was done. South Allston community has been sitting there getting migrated and getting their ears blown off for 60 years now. And mitigating that has got to be part of this. And it's all doable. The plan that the two towns were heavily involved in, essentially this project is fully funded, which is very rare. We got to finish the environmental process and get moving on it, but we got to do it right. So
That's amazing. I mean, that's as much history as you're ever going to hear. In case anyone, I'm glad this is being recorded because that is an incredible background of the whole project. I'm learning as I'm sitting here, 100%. So, and to your point, Fred, we had John Rosenthal in last spring, and he's building an air rights project right now, and he said the cost of building over the pike is so phenomenal that he happened to have land next door that he could use to leverage financing the turnpike piece. But you're right that without something like that, without people being smart up front, then those parcels are so expensive to build on. It's hard to, they need kind of the pump to be primed a little bit. They need that kind of help.
They're expensive because you have to think about practical things like ventilation. Those become really significant issues that need to be overcome. So you're right.
Yeah, and to be crucial about it, you can't have one like us that's working on construction for a job, drop a wrench and have it go through the windshield of a train that's going by. It is very dangerous to build over an active railroad and turnpike. You got to do this stuff and build the decks. You do it in advance. Yeah, it's not that hard. You do it after the fact. You spend a lot of money protecting the public, and you have to protect the public. That's one of the things that makes it so expensive.
But hey, sure. Actually, I walked here from my house at MIT, so I'm walking across the Nessa Bridge.
The collectors you mentioned, did I see Galen's? In fact, yeah, I apologize, Galen. All those of you who use Velocipeaks to circulate the city, in that's the CLD Norton. Two very important elements of the project are the current turnpike and rail dump all of their stormwater untreated into the Charles River. And one of the things this project has to do is totally change that so that no longer happens. Secondly, there's always tension in talk about the river between people who like to focus on along the river, which for a long time, that was the preoccupation of the MDC. But at least as important, in my view, a good friend of ours has passed on, Bob Slows, and the taking champion of this, is the connectivity to the river so that you can get to this wonderful asset instead of being walled off by the pike. So the connectivity to the river is a very important element. And the velocity connection is very important. There's an opportunity here, if it doesn't get screwed up by my fellow civil engineers, to have a bicycle path that begins at the I-bar, where Parsons Street joins the Charles River, goes east on half of Birmingham Parkway, which is too wide and doesn't need two barrels, and that's coming along nicely with DCR processing it. Cross Market Street and occupy the wasted space between Lincoln Street and the Turnpike. Replace the Franklin Street overpass with a ADA compliant and functionally sound bicycle and pedestrian path connecting the north side to the south side into something that somebody in this room called the People's Pike, which is a name that stuck. Then along the south side and then across the Aganis Connect extension, which is to connect you to the Charles and should be called the Bob Sloan Connector. And then onto the Paul W. White path. You'll have a bicycle path that can be totally safe and totally separated from cars all the way from the I-bar to North Station. It's pretty astounding opportunity. And that's another element with the connectivity. Connectivity is an ambiguous term because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. And the right answer is it's got to do all of them.
So I just want to say that having two lawyers up here, it's kind of fun that the civil engineers are taking the beating because usually it's the lawyers. So you both had talked a little bit about delay, right? And the kind of the importance of getting projects done because without it, you can lose momentum, prices can go up, etc. Of course, there's a lot of people with a lot of different interests, right? Legitimate interests, development, active transportation, more transit, and it is a relatively small envelope. Everyone can't get everything, I guess is what I'm thinking. Realistically, maybe they can, but it most usually be trade-offs in projects. How do you envision on a mega project, not necessarily Allston, but on any project, how do you balance all those competing interests to say how are we going to move a project forward, but also make sure we are thinking about equity, thinking about active transportation, having both the burdens and the benefits run to the community.
Well, so two things. To me, you should work really hard to not make those choices, but to accommodate the multiplicity, to do both is really the right way. Now, it's not always possible, but if you work hard, you can come pretty close sometimes. So that's I think, a really important piece of what you've got strive to do on this project or any project like it, because there are a lot of a lot of interests that can be viewed as competitive, but I think are better viewed as synergistic. And it's very often possible to do that with good design, in my experience. So not always, but it's worth more than trying, but really doing your best to do that.
I was looking at the pictures. There, I was thinking of the sort of physical Dorian Gray, never changes while you age. Time is no one's friend. Time is no one's friend. And that's particularly true when you're trying to get things built. And if you think about what it takes for a project to begin with an idea, and then go through the process of public engagement and input, and then decide, and then engineering, bids, early construction. If you're in the public sector, you're probably spanning a couple of political administrations. Right? Those things don't happen overnight. I think whether it's Allston or any other mega project, one of the things you got to be mindful of if you're in the business of transportation planning or policy making is how to manage this thing called time, right? And which practically means spanning a bunch of different administrations who have different priorities, mostly, sometimes, right? Navigating capacity within the organization. If you have good people tend to move on. Not all big people tend to move on, but it's a moving target. Public engagement, I think it's become sort of a double-edged sword, right? We have to do public engagement. But then the question comes to whose voices are being heard? How are you doing that engagement? I was listening to a video for one of the classes I teach. We were listening about 10 minutes of an interview with Robert Moses. Moses said, he was asked this question. So, 10 people like a project. He said, I might get one letter. But if 12 people don't like it, I'll get 11 letters, which is in the nature of human beings, right? I would say, as my experience as secretary, try to do something like dedicated bus delay or bus rapid transit. You might not get a lot of bus riders showing up, but you get a lot of residents who like, I can't double park and move up the tree. And so you really need to be very careful from a measure project, and that's like Allston. So you asked a broader question about the pluses and minuses of public engagement. Yes, you have to do it. You need to be so smart, strategic about it. And then there comes a point where leadership is required, and someone needs to follow the question, right? In a world where there's never going to be a perfect outcome on a mega project, I think there are so few of them, in part because there are funding constraints, but in part because the idea of taking it from idea through engagement, through design and engineering, all of the permitting hurdles, is really daunting. And very few people have the experience of good fortune to be Secretary of Transportation in 12 years. I'm looking in this direction, right? And so, our head governor, who is in office for that period of time, it serves the city politics. But, Son Benino has an idea, the Marty Walsh from a different point of view, and Michelle Wu a third point of view. If you're going to survive all of that transition, you got to figure out how to navigate that. That's really difficult stuff.
Yeah. One particular issue that's important, I think, to highlight is the institution who's building this project, the Central Artery project, tends to be a highway, as you see. And the mindset was set in the 1950s. They're very strong by, and they're not bad people. Believe in what they're doing, and they're around. They lax. Governors come and go, mayors come and go, but the bureaucracy remains with its values, and often there's a tendency to treat the environmental components that are essential to making a project worthy of being built as frills that, well, if we wave on people will be gays and we won't do them. And one thing that I'm hoping we can figure out how to do in Allston is to do the mitigation first. The People's Pike, the Franklin Street overpass, you can't do against because its path is currently occupied by the ugly viaduct. But you could do big pieces of this before you do the rest of the project. You can relocate the Paul W. White bike path, which is very huge. Try to use it. It's less than 8 feet wide. If you're trying to walk, you keep hearing on your left, the right. The joggers, bikes. It's like, it's a mosh. It makes it no fun at all to be walking. The opportunity there is to put a dual path, separate the bikes from the walkers, have some trees so there's shade. That should all be done. And the good news is that has to be done at the very beginning of this project, because you need to take down that viaduct and continue to have 3 lanes of travel, now carries 4 each way. Emily thinks it should be 3 each way. She will get a question. Waiting for your question, I believe. I'll shut up in a second. But in order to build the project, you've got to move Soldiers Field Road at the Paul W. White toward the river, and in the case of Paul W. White, into the river, in order to have the space to put the turnpike at grade. And the good news in that is you'll see, the public will see the improved treatment of stormwater, the improved edge of the Charles, the improved Paul W. White, in the slight intrusion into the Charles, which some people don't like. But it won't be a mystery that's hidden from the public, and then there's a surprise 10 years or it either doesn't happen, or people say, what the hell is this? We never heard about it. You do it at the very front end. I think that's a real value. In the case of MBTA, there was supposed to be 3 air rights developments. One for Major Jim near Haymarket, one for Museum of the History of the City near the Armenian Memorial, and one for Horticultural Society. The Horticultural Society, no, not horticultural, it was the Newton-based Performing Arts Center right next to the Boston Harbor Hotel. Great concept, great ideas. It was part of the environmental impact statement. When they tried to implement them, the GB engineers hadn't built the right foundations. It was going to be a $50 million premium and that was enough to kill all 3 of the projects. $50 million on each of them. So that just engenders cynicism. People think they were going to get something fantastic, and then, whoop, right? We disappear. So, to the degree possible, to do it in advance, are these major elements in advance to get the decking built, to get the foundations in, so it's going to be real. I think, and a good piece of the People's Pike ought to be done before the rest of the project.
I also think people should now be paying attention to the transit and rail components in the state in a granular way, because people have said today in the operations, should they be express train going pretty fast bypasses per station or not? I think the answer was no. But how many platforms on tracks? How quickly is train introduction going to get done and open up? Because for me, I would say much less directly involved in this than Fred. I observed this from my perspective, both as city making, but also has a significant element of the fulfillment of most of the values that we all say in this area we are aligned in thinking about. Like we say we want to reduce carbon emissions in that velocity in the airport. We say we want to improve public health outcomes by reducing particulate matter emissions. We say we want a more inclusive, as socially just economy. Right? Anybody in the room against that? Well, you can't do any of the highly functional affairs. The rail system, you just can't. We have to confront that reality. And this is a little bit of a segue from, the state's current decarbonization plan when it comes to the transportation sector, our current climate plan. Everything the legislature has done to advance that. And two governors, including Girl, in my judgment, doesn't get us there, right? It's all about putting every egg in the basket of people driving electric vehicles, right? That doesn't cut it. First of all, the worst is particulate matter emissions. And we have studies from BU and Harvard for the past several years that show that high concentrations of PM2.5 in urban areas cause severe health outcomes. And it's like, boy, it was traced to 15% higher photo mortality rates in certain communities here, right? They studied this in London too, which is not a surprise. And so if we're going to achieve all these things, if we pat ourselves in the back here in Metro Boston and say, these are our values, then we need to do something about it and not just talk about it. And it's not, I'm not against electric vehicles. What I'm for is a more balanced, achievable, multimodal system. And with an opportunity like we have to Allston, you really can't let that go out of the boards or get done wrong, right? We've got to think about how to move more people, as the former governor's commission on the future transportation said. We have to move more people in fewer vehicles. Getting people to jobs or school at Kendall from Metro West from the Worcester area. Getting people want to go to the Worcester Blue Sox by train. Having a really vibrant car and then using a West Station as a very active zone, just as active as South Station, right? That's possible. But it depends on how it's built, when it's built, how quickly your Junction goes online, and the details about platforms, about dual running trains, those things, those of you who are really interested in this need to pay attention to now and make sure that the folks who are thinking about this in this administration are thinking about it right away.
I would love to get some questions from the audience. I'm sure there's a lot of people here with a lot of thoughts about Allston. So I'd love to get, but I also agree. I just want to say I agree with Jim. There are so many details that are easy to forget, that the MBTA needs access to the Grand Junction to maintain coaches. Are they going to build a Southside maintenance facility? And these things are really integral to making the project a success and to making the transit system around here work as well as it can. So don't forget about these details. It's like kind of easy to be like, oh, it's too much, and to push it off, but these are super important parts of the whole process.
This underscore a point. You read in the newspaper, which happened a few days ago, an Amtrak sends a nasty letter saying, we want labor with space and also mandate. The reaction should be a letter, letters to the editor or whatever. You do. And it's like, really? Really? Now Amtrak actually needs layover space somewhere, but it shouldn't be there, right? You have this thing called Bidet, maybe it should be there. The T-test shouldn't have much layover space at all. The T should be running more trains all day long. Like having trains sit idle, it's not just wasteful. It runs contrary to every way in which you use the rail system that they have, this precious asset, to actually encourage people to mode shift out of their car and onto a train, right? You don't do that by having trains lay over, right? You can talk about, like you said, something about subway grading line, right? The safest system in the world is one where the trains don't move. We have to get out of this mindset, all right? We really have to get out of this mindset where we're in the grip of fear and be bold enough to say, that's not the vision we want in 21st century Boston. 21st, we're at the beginning of the second quarter of this century. How did we get here? What have we done other than complete the big dig, build out one of the big digs true legally required? Like, think about what we've done in this century. We've built out one of the big digs legally required transit improvements, the Green Line extension at 10 miles an hour. We haven't built the Redwood Connector legally required. We finished the big dig. Where else have we done? Oh, maybe South Coast Rail will open next year. Let's see how that goes. We're not building big things like we used to. We're not thinking in a large way. Or Allston Landing can't be that opportunity in the second quarter of the 21st century. Help us, where we figure out how to get our mojo back and do it in a way that responds to our aligned values. So we keep saying we are for. Let's do it. Let's figure it out.
I think our first question. First question. Are you?
I just had the murder.
Oh,
What? All right.
My name is Emily Yorton. I got a shout out from Fred, so I felt like I needed to deliver. So I want to make a broad point. Is this working? Yeah. And then target our position broadly about transportation and doing big things. My other gig, I was a city councilor in Newton for 10 years. The Star Markers actually in Newtonville. I'm worried, not New Corner. And I think what happens is that politicians are afraid of raising your taxes. So they don't raise your taxes. So they don't have money to do big things. So then we look around and we're like, well, our public services are crap. I'm not going to give them more money. So then we don't demonstrate that we're willing to pay more in taxes. So it really is our government. If we would all demonstrate, however that is, that we would support big things. And I submit to you, when Charlie Baker was the most popular governor in America, year after year, and didn't do enough of the tea, in my opinion, why would he do more about the tea when he's already the most popular governor in America? So that is sort of the political problem with the big thing issue. I think it's solvable. I think you see in communities that when people are given opportunities to vote on a school, vote on a pool, vote on some sort of project or property tax override, many times, not always, many times though, they do it because they've seen, I kind of want a new school for my kids. So I do think it's solvable, but it's challenging. Jaws River Watershed Association's position on this project, love West Station. Yes, we should be developing that land in a climate resilient way, et cetera, et cetera. We do not think it is justified to build, to intrude in the river with roadway or bike path, et cetera. I would like to remind everyone, for 5 years, when you drive in on the Mass Pike or out, there's been a cone blocking a lane in each direction. So it is not even theoretical to say, what would it be like if we rebuilt the Mass Pike with 6 lanes? You've been living that. It would be no worse than now. And in December 2019, the Natural West legislators sent a letter to MassDOT with all the mitigation they would like to see during construction of this project in order for their constituents not to be harmed and not have congestion and so forth. It's a great list. Bus, rapid transit, park and ride, et cetera, more frequent service, whatever. Just do those things. Imagine how much money we could save if we don't overbuild this roadway. Now, there are those who think maybe it's more feasible to reduce lanes on Soldiersfield Road. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do think, to Jim's point about mindset, and if we're serious about being modern in how we are approaching transportation and mobility and reducing carbon emissions, this is literally where the rubber meets the road. If we rebuild this road, and we've commissioned some renderings, happy to show folks at whatever's looked like the 12 lanes of highway between BU and the river, it looks awful, versus fewer lanes. When you can have green space, you can have bypass, you can have it all without intruding into the river that we've spent close to $1 billion cleaning up. And Matt's Rome, our stormwater program manager, is here. We could talk about water quality. We're getting closer and closer to being able to swim in the river. Maybe we should be talking about that each area in this area that we're talking about. So I don't want to ramble on. I just want to be very clear about what our position is. We're very in favor of this project, but we think absolutely it is feasible and even logical that we would build it in such a way where else in Massachusetts are we planning a new commuter rail stop and essentially expanding highway capacity? Because that's what we would really be doing here. We would be going from 6 lanes to 8 lanes after, remember, it'd be down all during construction of this project. So for years and years and years, people would be driving on 6 lanes of Mass Pike, and then we would be expanding it. How does that make sense?
Thank you, Emily. I think there's a question in the back. Oh, here, I think. Well, do not set to respond.
To respond a bit, Emily makes a very strong point. I would argue that there is a difference between putting the road into the river and putting the alternately wide path into the river. The edge of the river is miserable. It's not usable by humans in any comfortable way. The path isn't wide enough to accommodate the joggers, bike peoples, the pedestrians. The slope is too steep. You can't have a beach. I think to do this right, there needs to be some fill in the river. But on your point on the number of lanes, there is a requirement under federal law, if people pay attention to the federal law, which they try to ignore, that because parkland is adversely affected, you can't do anything to fix the turnpike without impacting DCR-owned parkland. And you're supposed to do, quote, all possible planning, close quote. That was in the statute in 1966. And occasionally it's been used, was used to block a highway that was going to destroy an Olmsted Park in Tennessee. It's a very powerful feature of law which the agencies do their best to ignore. There ought to be serious consideration. I'm not sure that Ellen is right because time will pass and she's absolutely right. You're only going to have 6 lanes during construction. In order to make that work, there ought to be a big increase in the amount of commuter rail that you operate so that people can still do their business. And then you'll get the public to not freak out if you say, by the way, we're not going to give you your 4th lane back, because they'll have learned that there's another good way to go. But if the state continues to provide the current, pretty lousy frequency, people are going to buy it. We are a democracy, and so this has got to be considered properly in the environmental process and beyond. But a key factor in the success of the project is to have enough so-called mitigation and enough extra service on those stations in Newton so that people can take the train instead of their car. That's a key ingredient to make Emily's vision even conceivable.
There is a line in a poem by C.S. Eliot where he says, "We had the experience of Mr. Meade, and we do this all the time." Think about the pandemic. I was hoping that after the pandemic there would be a renewed thinking about citizen view about cities. Like, how do we think about the urban public realm? How do we think about sharing this finite public space, streetscape? Restaurants once spill out, people want, maybe we'll have a different way of thinking about it. We had the experience of this meeting, when Mayor Allston has to fight like the Nickens to get people to think about sharing the finite space with, say, protected cycling lanes or dedicated bus space. We're getting it along. She's not getting it along, but it should be easier than it is. It really should be. You should have learned a lesson from the experience of the pandemic. But it seems that, and I guess the people grow up, collectively, there's this sort of amnesia going on. A lot of amnesia going on in the selection cycle. So I just want to point that out. That can also be true for maybe we have the experience of building with the turnpike as is for a while during construction, so we don't forget the meeting. I go back to my larger point. if we're serious about reducing emissions and PM 2.5 and all the things to reduce the traffic congestion, whatever, we need motion for people. We just need to do it. But you can't do it based on the status quo, because the status quo isn't mode shifting. I think all we're doing is mode shifting people from transit to other modes, right? I mean, sadly, right? The mode shifting people from transit to walking, from transit to Uber, but that's not doing what's just supposed to work. So I really think opportunities like Allston Landing should be galvanizing for those of us who think about Metro Boston and City of Boston more broadly, and about how we go back to how our investment decisions are responding to our collective values.
I'll jump in. Thank you. Thanks. My name is Galen Book. Fred called me out too, so I feel like I must jump in. Thanks, Chip. Thanks, Fred. I'm an Allston resident and a BU alum myself. I kind of wanted to reframe. I know you've talked a lot about the major implications, the regional impacts, from IOP and Amtrak and all the rest, but I kind of want to bring it back to where we are. Show of hands, how many folks in the room are affiliated with VU or live on campus? A BU student, I want to reflect that I think this campus particularly is impacted by transportation. I remember when I first moved here, there was the construction of ComEd Phase 1. That was back when we still had tokens on the T and outbound Green Line was free. And I remember Preston Brown had a map in his office that showed the Charles River as the centerpiece for getting to and from campus. And people would get to BU 5 boats until Surgeons Field Road Storage Ride came along. I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about what Boston University can benefit from or miss out on with this project, considering what is at stake. And I wonder if Jim, if you have any thoughts to bring into that. And my purpose for that is anybody who's in the room who is connected to BU, fight like hell to make sure that we don't miss the opportunities.
Well,
You have willpower.
I believe is the person who represents BU at the task force here. I don't know her, so I would recognize her. Guess not. A Better City had some conceptual work done pro bono by an urban designer from Harvard named Alice Krieger, who showed the possibility of some air rights over the pike so that you wouldn't be looking at all those lanes of highway and rail that Emily just described, which is pretty horrendous if you look at those graphics. And Alex's vision had a functional building for BU. There are at least two prime locations to think about. One would be immediately the street that runs. There's a street called Buick Street, which is ambiguous because it makes a right angle turn. So the part of Buick Street that runs along the turnpike, right across that Buick Street from the Agganis Arena, is a parcel that would be right next to the Agganis connector. So the Agganis connector, instead of being a long, skinny bike path that might be a little bit scary at night if there's not people around, and some things are great in the middle of the day or on Sunday afternoon, but not so great at 9 o'clock at night. But if you had a living building adjacent to a piece of it, it would make a huge difference. So Alex suggested that, I don't know, Tom, how many years ago Alex did that work. It's got to be 7 years, 5. That's one thing to sort of dust off and look at again. Another parcel is at the corner of the BU Bridge where it intersects with Commonwealth Avenue, and you look towards the west, you get a nice sunset there once in a while. There's something nice about it, but it's a big expanse of roadway. To go back to Am's comment earlier, the discussion with which is in John Rosenthal. Yet, you can develop air rights best if you got some real land to develop along with the air rights. And BU owns the land, owns two triangles on either side of the turnpike at that funny intersection. It's expensive to build right over the turnpike, but you could put a platform there like for pedestrians and looking at the sunset, and two buildings on either side, and really make that a stunning gateway for BU. And there's a similar opportunity where what used to be called Sergeant Jim on the other side of the BU Bridge at the corner between BU Bridge and University. The BU campus has this split in the middle. I mean, there's this kind of long no man's land you have to walk through to go from one part to the other. The institutional master plan of BU calls for those to be developed, but the financial pressures of BU, I've been told, have led to those projects being postponed. But if they're not thought about now in timely fashion, they may be precluded by the way the road is built. So those are a couple of things to look at. Harry, there's also, I think Bob and you, I'm not sure who, maybe it was Glenn. In addition to the Aganis connector, there was the idea that there's another potential bike and pedestrian connector parallel to the BU Bridge, a little bit west of it, in that parcel I've just been describing. So there are some things that are really worth looking at right now for BU. I think they're in a tough spot financially, but sometimes if you get people excited, you can find ways to do things.
Great. I think we have time for one more question.
All right, you mentioned that the financing is in place. What's your best scenario for the time bike?
Governor Healy said, as a condition of getting the federal money, you're supposed to get you're supposed to get a shovel in the ground in 2 years or something like that. Governor Healy publicly announced that the state was absolutely going to meet the timeline and that she expects the National Environmental Policy Act process to be completed by this coming March. She said that in March. We've now wasted 6 months because the MBTA, if you'll pardon my bad English, is screwing around, playing games with Amtrak, who is screwing around, and causing a lot of delay with proposals that have zero merit. The idea that you put a bypass track to bypass West Station, when West Station was the key to access to Kindle, is nuts. It doesn't deserve consideration. There are, I think, 19 stations between Worcester and South Station. None of them have bypass tracks. Why would you put bypass tracks here? It's just a waste of money, a waste of space, and it undercuts it, and that's wasting a lot of time. They've been talking about a midday place to park trains, as several people have mentioned. We shouldn't, Jim mentioned, we shouldn't be parking the trains. We should be running the trains and carry passengers. That's a big waste of money. The MBTA spent $255 million buying with that circle, which is very close to South Station and is the appropriate place to do some minor repairs and train washing and some storage, but not as much as the MBTA keeps talking about. There's when Tom Glenn was general manager of the T, he told a story that he was riding in the cab of a light rail vehicle in the Green Line, and as they approached Park Street, the squawk box, which was the way they communicated back in 1989, 90, the squawk box says, "Drop the freight off at Park Street." And Tom looked at the conductor and said, "The freight? You mean our customers are like lumps of coal that you're dropping up?" That's the attitude with the MBTA. You're a bunch of pieces of wood. We just carry you around. If you have to wait, why aren't they running shorter trains more frequently? It's frequency that's the key to a system that you really want to ride. So I said a lot of bad things about highway builders. There's a lot of bad thinking ingrained in some of the transit people, and they're causing a lot of delay. It's very destructive. I'm hoping the article you might have read by Chesto in, I think, yesterday's paper, I find encouraging. I think it's moving towards resolution, but we've lost 6 months. You could still make next March, but you got to get serious now to get it done. Then you'd have to do a procurement to get a design build to actually finalize the engineering and get the construction started. So you might see serious construction starting, especially on early action items like the Paul Dudley White and the Franklin Street. Maybe if we're lucky, we could see that in 4 years. And again, that's the reason, lest your eyes glaze over, that's the reason that I think it's so important to get as many of these. These are not frills. These are the things that are essential to make this a great project. Get them built at the front end before people forget that was the deal. And I think it's great that the governor set a deadline. I hope that she cracks through it and makes people stick to it.
I can guarantee you one thing. Nobody has ever said to anybody at the T, right, at the executive office, so getting this done reasonably quickly is critical to our efforts to decarbonize the transportation sector in Massachusetts and to create a more inclusive and just economy. No one's ever said that. Because if they said that, and therefore you need to get, I want to see the Gantt chart. You know what a Gantt chart is? Right? To show you the Gantt chart. So that should be the slogan as you leave here today, whether it's the Red Blue Connector or Allston Landing. Ask people, there was a commercial about show me the Carfax. Show me the Gantt chart. Because if they can't show you the Gantt chart, that means they're not serious about the follow of the director. That is, you'd be able to show you a viable Gantt chart that gets you from start to finish, and then you can assess whether then they censor that. But if now you are going to do that, something's up, and you'd ask the question of why.
So thank everyone for coming. I know we have more questions, but I think we are going to have people. The people are going to be available. Our friend Jim, I think, will be here. We have some refreshments in the hallway here. So first of all, thank you all for coming. Please do check the IOC website in the future. These are other great events. And then
Thank you, Jimmy Fabs. It's so great.
Let me just say one thing. This is our first forum in a year-long initiative on city transportation. There's some brochures of our next two events. The next event is geared towards all you VUs who want to have a career in transportation, or have senior leaders from both these to come talk a bit more quarterly for you to talk to individually. And then in November, we're doing the Mass Mobility Innovation Hub. And then we're right now planning for the spring and have ideas, even ones that are better than this. Contact me on my email. Fred and Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, well, the tip is on the press. Today,